I was just kind of feeling like in this, like, not a doom cycle, but just like this rut.
Did you feel like at the time it was a struggle to let go of being leaner to allow yourself to like gain a little bit of weight, potentially a little bit of body fat so that you could improve your performance?
Yeah, you're spot on. Yes, it was a challenge. You take the shirt off, and a lot of people were like, "Whoa, dude! Like, you're looking really good." And I'm a words of affirmation guy.
What were the most challenging parts of the prep?
The last 5 pounds and progress slowed, and my body really started to fight me. My main side effect, it was just the zombie mode, the fatigue.
How did the show go?
It was so much fun. Like I was like ecstatic to be up there. That out of the whole show, at the end they give like the awards for like the show. I think total there were about 35, 40 people.
What's going on, everyone? In today's episode, I'm excited to be joined by Devon Nitta, who in 2024 competed in his first natural bodybuilding competition. In our conversation, Devon shares his natural bodybuilding story, including how he first started getting into lifting weights and what led him to start getting really serious about it back in 2019. And of course, he shares all about his prep experience and the natural bodybuilding competition day itself. I know you're going to absolutely love this episode. So without further ado, let's dive in. What is training looking like for you right now? Like, do you have a regular training frequency? Are you training a certain number of days per week? And do you have like a preferred training split?
Yeah, sure. So currently, if you wouldn't mind, I'll back up a little bit and just kind of talk a little bit what led into this. So um, after I've competed one time, did my first show last August, right? And as most people who compete, I would assume after the show, they're like super motivated to like make progress and be like, yeah, let's just do this. Food's more plentiful. So I was training 5 days a week, which was historically a lot more than what I was used to. But this was post show. And I'm like, yeah, this is great. And then after about maybe 3 months, I was like, dang, I'm getting tired. I'm getting fatigued. And so, long story short, currently I'm doing 3 day split, and really it's kind of like more or less alternating between upper lower, upper lower, just kind of like 3 day Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But then even we try to experiment even with less volume because goodness gracious, I was like surprised. I think my through coaching that I received over the last 2, 3 years, my training efficiency as far as like what I get out of each set has like skyrocketed. And so I've noticed I was like, man, I can't do the same number of sets. So I'm just really gonna dial it back and focus on quality. And that's really been a game changer, at least from the recovery standpoint. Because beginning of this year, I was feeling pretty banged up. I was like, oh my gosh, like my joints and just overall like that drive to like get in the gym and do the workouts and stuff. And so yeah, that's what I'm currently doing right now.
I can really relate to that. I My kind of training history is that I went through phases of training like 7 days a week, like a full body training split, relatively high volume, just very high frequency. And then I dropped down to 6 days. And then I had phases of 5 days. And then I've reduced my training frequency to also encouraged by coaching. We're talking about Jeff, right?
Yep.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
and I've reduced my training volume and my training frequency down pretty significantly too. And I found the same things, which it's interesting, right? You'd expect that um, progress wouldn't be the same when you train less, but I found for myself that I've been making more progress since reducing my training frequency and my training volume. It's almost like you can concentrate more, focus more on less volume. You can almost like get more out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I vocalized several times. I was like, for some reason, when I look on the training log, and if I was programmed 3 sets of each exercise, and then all of a sudden that three turns into a two, I'm like, wow, mentally that's like so much more bearable. And it's like, oh, I got these two sets, make them count. And it wasn't like with three, you don't try to do that. It's just there's that little, I don't know if it's like a subconscious thing that you're just trying to, there's another like two and then a third set. So you're just like not almost giving it your all. It takes that extra push. So yeah, I feel yeah, I've noticed something similar. I think more than anything, the biggest benefit I've noticed is that like with dialing it back, I'm like, awesome. I haven't lost any size, like it's, and the world didn't collapse, which has been especially beneficial because we were traveling a lot the last month. Most of it was like vacation stuff. Also had some unexpected things happen from the family life that required extra travel. And it was just so comforting, like it was like a firsthand experience knowing, great, even if I get like one, two training sessions a week and I don't have my equipment, I don't have all the typical stuff, as long as I focus on those core concepts of just like training with the right intensity and like you're not going to lose muscle, in like a week. So that's been really cool to see.
Yeah. It's a freeing thought, right? You just mentioned that, you can train 1 or 2 times a week and have some peace of mind in knowing that you're not going to lose any muscle. I know that for myself in the past, I would worry, like if I miss one day of training in the week, I'm going to like be at risk of losing muscle or at risk of losing progress. But I think it does bring about a certain amount of peace of mind knowing that you don't need as much volume as you might think, at the very least, to hold on to the muscle that you've already built, and if not, make even more progress. Have you ever found yourself like falling into different rabbit holes with like what's going on in like the science-based YouTube fitness world with like all the different like fitness influencers or coaches or science-based, evidence-based influencers? Have you ever felt yourself kind of falling into different rabbit holes as far as that stuff goes?
Yeah, I would say, well, more so a few years ago. Like, I've always trained, like, lifted. I wouldn't consider myself being a serious lifter until about 2019, you know? And that's when I really started diving into like consuming all sorts of content. Um, but what you asked, yeah, totally, especially towards the beginning. And it was just like, so and so says do this, so and so says do that. There's some overlap, so okay, that's cool. But then on certain topics, people completely vary on their opinion. And so it wasn't until really I started getting coaching from, Jeff, that he really helped like center me and be like, look, that's great and all, but every single thing that people say, research this, studies that, always has to have like an asterisk next to it and says based like depending on the person, like, and I think Eric Helms, like has said multiple times too, is that like, yeah, these studies are great, but they're a conglomeration of a bunch of people, and people are unique, and they're just like this average, and so it's like, anyways, yeah, lately I felt a lot more, I still consume the stuff, like I still will say, oh, okay, like what's the latest on lengthen bias training, or number of volume per week that's optimal for muscle growth, and it's like, oh, this is what they're saying. But now after like 2 years of really gathering so much data on myself and like self-reflecting, I know, oh, that's cool, I'm not going to do that, because there's no way I'm going to recover from that. And if there is something that I'm like, oh, I'm curious, I'll try it out, I just know, have the sense better now to say, I'm not going to go like all in and change everything I'm doing. I might just incorporate a little bit of that and see how it goes. And depending on the result, it'll stick around in the routine or it won't.
Yeah, it makes logical sense. I think a lot of people kind of get confused being in the middle ground trying to decide like what should I do. This person says do X, this person says do Y. What's the right answer? But I think that's that approach makes logical sense. Basically, try you can try different approaches and then kind of figure out what works best for you, what you get make the most progress from, what suits your personality best too. I think that's probably important as well. Um, Something you mentioned was 2019 was the year that you started to take lifting like very seriously. Rewinding even further, like when did you first get into lifting weights? Like when did you first start? What did that look like?
Yeah, it started with, I don't know, I'm the youngest of five kids, and we're all a very sporty family. Like I grew up playing basketball, volleyball, and water polo, Southern California. It's a huge deal,
That's a
right?
cool one. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd always remember just even from like high school and stuff, like water polo season, I got like shredded by those standards, right? Like I was pretty cut, right? Like full six pack, all that stuff. And I was like, man, this is cool. I'm like in really good shape. Then basketball would come around, and I'd start losing a little bit of that, but I was still really active. And then volleyball, I love volleyball, but it's not a high calorically demanding sport compared to water polo or basketball. So then my physique, I would just notice like, man, I'm getting softer. And I'm in high school, so I'm not like watching what I eat super close, although I've always considered myself pretty health conscious, trying to like limit sweets and because I don't have a big sweet tooth, so that was kind of easy. But and then really in junior high is when like my dad got a Bowflex, you know, and when he got the Bowflex, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna get big, and so I was doing that, and I didn't really know really great technique or great anything. I just felt like I like the way I feel after I do this, the pump and just like the feeling of just like challenging yourself. But it was always off and on, right? Off and on, off and on. I kind of ebbed and flowed depending on my life situation. So like when I got to college, I had a little bit more of a routine where I could hit the student gym like in between classes. So got back into there. And then, well, I had my first kid and had started working, and it just kind of like, you know, I would still do it when I could, but I wasn't nearly as regimented as I am now. Like, I would be like, oh, I'll go like once or twice a week. I know I didn't have the intensity or the effort. I was just going like lifting the same weight. Oh, yeah, I do this on this. It wasn't really structured at all. But so 2019 comes around, and that's the year I'm about to turn 30. And I was just like, you know what? I can't, like, things are slowing down, like, with the metabolism or whatever, what have you. I don't know. But I just said, I don't like the way I'm looking or feeling. So I'm just going to go and consume, like, how do I properly do this stuff? And so that's really kind of what led to that in 2019, and it hasn't really stopped. I've just kind of been steady Eddie with the fitness journey. You know what I mean?
So going back to high school, you're an athlete. You notice your body kind of change between the different kinds of sports you were playing. The sports that you tended to be more active left you a little bit more lean, tighter. The sports where you were not moving around as much, you noticed that maybe you're a little bit fluffier. Then you got
Mm-hmm.
the bow flex. You started training, kind of got into that a little bit. You liked the feeling of the pump. Maybe you saw some results. And then you got into college, had like a gym membership when you were like a school gym membership, maybe, and you were kind of doing it a little, at least a little bit, several days a week in college, kind of off and
Yeah,
on. Yeah.
and it consisted of no lower body and
Classic.
predominantly push heavy. I was like, yeah, bench and like dumbbell press, and
Every
I
day
I
is
didn't
chest day.
exactly like I didn't know what back was. I was like, I don't see it. It doesn't exist right now. But
Yeah,
it
exactly.
it was yeah. So you're spot on. That was pretty much how it looked through
Okay.
college.
Okay. And then yeah, you had your first kid, and you have 3 kids now, right?
Yep, three boys. Yep.
Okay. So the lifting was kind of hit and miss, um, like busy with life, and then 2019 was when you started to like really dive in. So what was your lifestyle like in 2019? Like were you really at that point like how many kids did you have in 2019?
Yeah, 2019, I had two children. The
2
year
kids?
after we had our third, but
Got it.
I was in 2019. I was just like in it. I was kind of wrapping up towards the tail end of a job that I was just like, man, I it wasn't the best environment, like from a culture standpoint. Like I just didn't. I was really at a spot in my life at that point where I was like, I need to shift in my career. Like I got to find something else. So there was quite a bit of stress, from because the nature of the job I had at that time was like the busiest times were holiday times, and holiday times are typically when your fam wants to get together, and I would rarely ever be able to make it to like holiday events and stuff, and just that compounded over the years because I worked at that place from 2015 to about 2019, and 4 years of that I was just like so burned out, and I would say that was the biggest driving factor for like how hit and miss the training was because like we're talking got to get up at 4 a.m. some days. You're not getting home until freaking 7 night, and you're just like, time you get home, you're just fried. But gratefully, it was kind of like the last straw mentally where I was just like, I gotta change something, and if I can't control like the job, I'm always gonna be like looking elsewhere. I can't control what opportunities will come up, but I'm going to control what I can, and that is how I feel physically. And so, gratefully, right around that same time, I actually did find a more um, balanced environment to work. And so that kind of was like the great like launch pad to just be like, cool, new physical regimen, like a new job. It's a little more easier from the life perspective, and no going back now, kind of a deal, you know?
Yeah. Did you when you dived in with with the fitness stuff, with taking lifting more seriously, did you go straight into training 5 days a week at that point?
No, I had to, throughout the time, I kind of experimented with stuff. Like I did some push pull legs, my attempt at pull and legs, because we all know like chest was the only body part back in college. But I would like dabble, you know. But I settled on the fact that I do like full body. So I did start with like a total body classic 3 day a week thing just because I did enjoy being able to do more of those compound lifts and be like, okay, cool. I'm seeing my strength go up over time. I do get adequate rest. I also stimulate, all muscle groups several times a week. And so I rode that full body train for a solid, I would say like 2.5 or 3 years. Like it wasn't until like 2023, beginning of 2023, that I was just like, man, I'm just not feeling this. Like, I just don't have the motivation to come. I started having a lot more aches and such.
Right.
And, over 3 years, my strength had progressed to a point that where for me, I was like, wow, I'm lifting a lot more than I was 3 years ago. And the motivation was kind of gone. And it's actually that point when I was like, you know what? I've been following these folks at 3DMJ a long time. I'm just gonna like submit an intake form and see what happens, and that's when Coach Alberts, he was like, hey, he's reached out, had a consult and everything, and in talking, and then when I told him like, hey, we've been doing full bodies, like, have you ever thought about switching the split? And I'm like a great student. Like I'm a great like soldier in the army. I'm like, you tell me what to do, I will do it. Like because I guess I was just like, what's the worst that could happen? I like fall into the same rut that I felt like I was in at that point. I'm nowhere worse, so let's try it. And sooner or later, I noticed, hey, this is kind of cool. Like splitting my body into more of like upper and lower. um, which by and large has been like the main split or a variation of that I've run for the last 2.5 years, and
Okay.
I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I want to talk more about the changes that you made, the changes to your training split, and what it was like when you initially started working with Jeff, and eventually starting your prep and the competition itself. But
Yeah.
rewinding a little bit, I know that you mentioned when you were initially reaching out for the coaching, you mentioned that things were starting to get, and I'm not correctly paraphrasing you. I don't think I'm doing my best, but it sounded like things were kind of getting stale up to that point. I think you mentioned you had some like aches and pains leading into it. Can you elaborate on that? Like, what were you experiencing really that led you to seek out the help? Like, did you have frequent injuries that were coming up, or was it just like the workouts were kind of boring? It was you're having trouble progressing, or can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say it was a combination of all the above, but like starting with like I was just kind of doing a same routine, same exercises for a long time, which, I know there's nothing wrong with that, but it was just the motivation. It was getting stale. I was just like, because I was still in the mindset of like, hey, I have this program, and it was a program that I bought. So I'm like, I'm going to get my money's worth out of this thing. And so I was sticking with it 2 years, right? And I was just like, at towards the end of that time, I was just like, man, I'm feeling stale with it. I don't feel like I'm progressing. But layer on top of that, it was just kind of like I was trying to stay too lean. That's really what it came down to. Because part of it was like throughout that 2 year process, I was like, I want to get as lean as I can possibly get. And I'm not the biggest guy. I'm like 5'8". In my healthy middle weight, I would say I'm like 160, 165, right? Um, so I was like, oh, let me get down to let me try to get to 10% body fat. That's the whole thing. My infatuation with like numbers there. And at my university where I'm an alumni, they have this bod pod, right? Like, and oh, hey, it's a discount to do a bod pod assessment. So I was doing that. And according to the bod pod, I get now there's a margin of error. But visually, I was like, oh, wow, I'm looking pretty lean. This is the leanest I've ever got. And that was right where I hit like 150. But in hindsight, I was like, there's no wonder I wasn't super progressing because I was like, wasn't well fueled, you know? Like I was constantly trying to stay in this, like, let's just call it 10%, 10-ish% body fat. And and part of like the consumption of fitness advice was like, yeah, 10%, that's like the prime sweet spot. In hindsight, I'm like, no, it's not for me at least. Like I can't maintain that and still feel energized and well fueled to like progress in the gym. And so, anyways, that paired with taking total body, I'm like, yeah, I'm not well fueled. I'm like hitting my full body every 3 days, and I'm just like not seeing any progress. And so part of the thing was, hey, let's get back up to more of a heavier body weight. And I did that prior to soliciting help, coaching, because I was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna get back up to 160. Sure enough, I started feeling better. Like the the aches started to go away, but not fully because I was still trying to do total body. Like I brought the weight up, so that helped, but then I was still keeping with the total body stuff, which for me at the time I was like, I got to change something up. And I was just kind of feeling like in this, like, not a doom cycle, but just like this rut. I was like, I'm not making any progress. I just keep, when I get too soft, I try to cut and I'm not making progress there. So it's just this constant like cycle. So that's at that point where I was like, okay, I want to just get some help. I just want to see, like, because I'm kind of like a there's like languages of appreciation, which you may not have heard of. I'm definitely like a words of affirmation guy, meaning if I'm doing something right, I it resonates well with me if you just tell me I'm doing something right rather than, you know, another form of communication. And so that's where the value in the coaching is coming. Is like assessing what I've done. Okay, I think this is cool. Hey, I think you ought to try something different. Loud and clear. That's like the type of messaging that helps me really realize, okay, cool, yeah, let's switch it up and experiment with different things.
I can relate to that too. It's like getting some kind of feedback and having peace of mind from, like you mentioned, like words of affirmation. Are you when you mentioned that you're kind of in this perpetual like deficit, almost like you're kind of trying to stay around like that 10% body fat range, are you the kind of or did you feel like at the time it was a struggle for you to kind of let it a struggle to let go of being leaner to allow yourself to like gain a little bit of weight, potentially a little bit of body fat so that you could improve your performance? Did you ever find that that was a particular challenge? Or what was it
Yeah,
that left you kind of married to being so lean?
I think, yeah, you're spot on. Yes, it was a challenge. And alluding back to the words of affirmation thing is because I remember vividly, it aligned perfectly with summer, right? I got to 10% and it was like May. And so that's when like you go into the pool, you're going to this my in-laws have a cabin up at a lake around here, and so they had this family gathering where my wife's cousins were there, and you take the shirt off, and a lot of people were like, "Whoa, dude, like you're looking really good." And I'm a words of affirmation guy, right? And so getting those compliments was like invigorating to a degree until that fizzled out. And then I realized day to day, I'm just not feeling like the best I could, right? And so, yeah, it certainly was a challenge. And I feel like the comments and just like people saying, wow, you're looking great, that made it partially like hard to say, you know what, I got to let go of this physique, not totally, right? But I got to get softer. I got to start feeling more energized to progress again.
Yeah, yeah. So they were kind of reinforcing you being so lean, and it kind of led you to want to stay in that spot. I definitely get that.
Hmm.
At that point, what was your understanding of how nutrition affects like your rate of like weight gain or weight loss up to the point of you like kind of staying at 10%? Did you like calculate your own calories, or did you like follow some kind of diet online? And then when you decided to allow yourself to gain some weight to improve your performance and potentially build more muscle, like what was your approach in gaining weight? Like did you like allow yourself to go out and have big cheat meals every once in a while, or did you have like more of a structured approach?
No, definitely more structured. Part of like the consumption of all that fitness, I'm a numbers guy and I like science. Like part of this whole thing too was just I liked experimenting on using myself as like a living experiment of like, so and so says like do this and you'll see that. I'll try it and see if it works. But like part of the 2019 like starting was, okay, great, roughly give or take 3,500 calories per pound of body weight or fat or whatever it is, right? So if you want to lose a pound a week, 3,500 divided by 7, 500-ish calories a day. So like I had that in mind, and I was consuming like, okay, I heard about the dreamer bulks and all that crap, and I'm like, I don't want to do that. I've never done it because again, I feel like I've raised myself with good habits. Like I never was a like a super heavy in the sweets. I always was like, oh, I got to try to get my fruits, my vegetables, whole foods mostly. Like even through high school, that was kind of my mentality. So I felt grateful looking back that I already had that those habits in place more or less. And so as I matured more, it was just more so just like fine tuning what was already there. So yeah, I did it methodically. I was like, okay, I don't want to gain more than 2 pounds a month. Let's call it, right? And so that's kind of what I followed. I was weighing myself, I was tracking, doing all that stuff. In hindsight, I was like, I could have been weighing things better, but nonetheless, I was still doing some sort of like structure.
Got it. And then as you were progressively gaining weight and maybe a little bit of body fat along the way, what was that like? Was it tough for you to allow yourself to gain the extra weight, or did you kind of allow yourself some accept accept it and allow yourself some mental peace as you were gaining weight? What was that like?
I would say it was a mix, right? Like I think it's might be human nature that you're just constantly you have different like thoughts going through your head. Like at least for me, I was like, dang it, this sucks. Like I'm getting softer, but then I was like, but I am feeling better in the gym. So I would like have to actively tell myself like there's trade-offs here, right? Like most people, unless you're in like the 1%, can't really feel amazing and be like super shredded and progress at the same time. That's just not the majority of people. So I would tell myself, okay, I'm feeling better. This is doing great. But then I would like reset my expectation mentally. I would say, they say comparison is a thief of joy, and it is in certain instances. But maybe this sounds bad, but I'm like, but the way I look now, heavier, I still look pretty decent when I go to the public pool with my family, If you just take the sample size of, let's say there's like 100 something people there, 100 something dudes, right? And I'm like, okay, I still look pretty, yeah, pretty good.
You're
Yeah,
still top 1% of the population easily.
yeah. I mean, it's just even like recently, and obviously I feel like I've made some progress and stuff, but I was my good friend, he was there with his family, and he makes a comment like, dude, what are you doing? Like I got to do what you're doing. And in my mind, I'm like, yeah, but I'm like softer than I want to be. But then I just have to say, I just told him, hey, thanks, man. Whereas maybe a few years ago, I would have been like, yeah, but I'm not as lean as I want to be. I've learned and I feel like I've matured a little bit more on this journey to say, just take it, be like, thanks. I really appreciate that. Here's what I'm doing, you know? And so those are things like that I feel like I've progressed in mentally,
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. I think that I think that it's a helpful shift of perspective at least I found for myself to remember, like when I see myself get a little bit softer, like what's soft for me is actually like a dream for somebody else, like for the mainstream population that isn't like lifting weights and trying to build tons of muscle and thinking about competing in natural bodybuilding. But yeah. Okay. So 2023 rolls around, you get in touch with Jeff, you start working together, you change from your full body training split to an upper lower split. And at this point, were you training, was this like 3 days a week training? Did you increase to 4 or 5, or did you keep the training frequency the same? Or what did that look like when you started working with Jeff?
Yeah, started at 4, kind of oscillated between 3 and 4 just because I came on to team 3DMJ like in June of 2023. And so it's summer. I had some trips planned. So that's why it was kind of like, if I can get 4, let's do it. But if not, do 3. So that was kind of like, depending on the week, we would just kind of adjust depending on the schedule. Um, but really, what was kind of interesting was again me just having to get used to at first, like the new split. I'm like, because I would do an upper day and then think, wait, I still have lower to do. But then it was just like, no, I got to get out of that mentality. But I got out of that pretty quick. I was like, hey, this is great. Like, I know I can just focus on the upper half of my body. Next day, the lower half. And if I have to miss a day or I have a travel, it's like cool. Like, just push it out a day or two, and you're just get some more recovery. So it was quickly I found there's a lot of benefits to that type of split.
Yeah. At what point, when you initially signed on with them, did you have competing in mind, or did that thought come a little bit later?
That's a great question. It's just funny because Coach Alberts, when we were talking, he's like, "Have you thought about competing before?" And I said, "Nah, nah." I'm like, I'm not thinking about that right now. I just want to get some progress and obviously have some help there. And that was that. And I did like that every 3 months. I would check in. Okay, here's 12 weeks of programming and nutrition, all that stuff. Okay. Well, 3 months go by. This is September. He says, "You thought about competing?" And I was like, nah, not really. But all the while, I'm talking to my wife, and and I'm like, he asked if I wanted to compete. I don't know about that, but she knows me better than anybody, and she said, "You kept talking about it. You kept talking about competing." And you could see over the months that, because I learned a lot about myself over the last few years. Especially with this, I'm like, I like doing hard things. And I think that was part of it. Coach Albert's like asking that, never in a direct way. I mean, just his style. It's just like, let's just throw it out there, never pushy. The way I took it was for myself, just a little mini challenge of like, could you do this? Could you do this? And it wasn't until like January that I said, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. So January 2024 is when I started and decided I'm going to do this. And I'm just going to do, there was a local show here. It wasn't a big show, but it was something local. And I was like, just to get my feet wet, let me try it out. And so January 2024 is when it all started.
Up until that point, what was your kind of understanding of competing in natural bodybuilding? Was it something that you'd looked into in the past, or was this like a whole new thing? Like, holy crap, I didn't know that there was this natural bodybuilding thing. And when Jeff brought it up, that was when you first looked into it. Or what was your background and initial understanding of natural bodybuilding, competing, competitions at that point?
I would say I had some understanding. Obviously, I had been following 3D MJ and other natural guys for a while. And so I at least saw, wow, I can't believe these guys are natural. These guys look amazing, and I say that because it was really encouraging too. It was like, yeah, I mean, look what can get accomplished naturally, without the aid of extra substances and such, right? Um, and so yeah, I was vaguely familiar, but I was still saying like, you know what? I had like peace knowing like, you know what, hire I have the coach, I have Jeff, and I'm a good soldier. Like I'm a good student. So it's like you tell me the protocol, I'll follow it. And so yeah, even though I didn't understand fully, I didn't have much stress because I was like, I had gotten to 10% before. So I was like, okay, I have an idea of what it gets like to get more or less pretty lean by most standards, right? And it's just the 10% and beyond that I was like, okay, this is uncharted territory. Like, so, but again, I was grateful to have Coach Alberts because it was like, he'll help guide me through the process.
What did you find was the most challenging, or what were the most challenging parts of the prep, even having Jeff's help?
Well, you know what? It was pretty smooth sailing up until about the last 5 pounds. Like,
Yep, that's
and
how it
that
usually goes.
that was and last 5 pounds, like I got to the target stage weight, when Jeff told me, I was like, what? I haven't weighed that much since junior high. So my target weight was 140. And I was like, what the frick? Are you kidding me? But I was like, okay, I'm just gonna trust you. You've done this forever. And when I got to about 145, then that's when it was like, I got to 145 in June. The show wasn't until August, right? So I was like, really had a lot of time, and we allowed for a more slow and steady. So yeah, up until that point, it was like not too bad. Yeah, there's hunger, but it's not excruciating. I had some trips that I felt proud of myself because I was like, I stuck to the regiment and trips for work and everything. And but yeah, when I would say up until that point it was fine, but when June happened, the last 5 pounds and the progress slowed and my body really started to fight me. My main side effect, it was just the zombie mode, the fatigue. Like I I always would tell, and before this whole backtracking, before this whole process, I sat down with my family and my wife, and I had to get her buy-in, right? Like I was like, you have to keep me in check. And if it ever gets to the point where you're like, you're just a horrible person, there's nothing worth like this isn't worth like causing a rift or like emotional heartache. So I would like check in with her and weekly, sometimes daily. How am I doing? Am I being a douche or am I not? And she was honest with me and she was like, you know what, honestly, like, yeah, you were more irritable, but I felt by and large you were fine, which was kind of comforting to me. But still, outside of that, it was just like the fatigue. I'd be literally like sitting down because I worked from home at the time fully. And I would just like sit in this chair, and before I knew it, I was just like dozing off. And I like wake up. I'm like, what the heck happened? Like, oh, I fell asleep for like 5, 10 minutes or whatever it is. So that
Yeah,
was the most
definitely.
challenging thing for sure.
How did you? So that would have been so it as you put it, zombie mode. That hit June, then you had July, and then you competed in August.
Hmm.
So how did you get by? How did you balance family life with working from home? I know that feeling too. That's been my experience too. Is sitting at my computer chair and trying to keep myself going was is always one of the bigger challenges. But I'm curious, how did you manage that feeling of fatigue with whatever productivity you had to keep up with work and keeping up with family life and yeah, what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, when work was one aspect, and so it helped when there was a lot of it was a very project based job. So when there was a lot of projects in the pipeline, it was easy. And so that helped. But I always joke, it's kind of funny because I the way at home that I would keep myself productive, because I like to cook. I'm the guy who does most of the cooking at my house. Like I cook dinner for my fam. But since I was starting to get more food focused, you know, and thinking about, oh man, I'm a huge fan of all kinds of stuff. I'm like, man, I could go for some chicken katsu curry right now or something. So what I would do is I would say, I'm gonna make this for my family. And so I would go to the store, get like the ingredients, make it. And again, looking back, if I can pat myself on the back, I was so proud of myself because I was like, I will have one bite and that'll be it. And the rest my family will enjoy. So I made a ton of like gourmet type stuff in July and August. Like, because, and then my family was just like, wow, this is great. Like, we're getting all this like nice food. And I was like satisfying the craving or like the food focus, taking one bite. And after I would take one bite, I would say, okay, there is no food that is worth that I can't eat in 3 months or whatever, 2 months, that is worth derailing my progress now. Like just telling myself, like, this isn't the last time I'll ever eat this thing. Matter of fact, there'll be many times in my life. So
Yeah.
it's not worth it. So again, that was kind of a big thing. And my wife would joke and say, yeah, you were trying to fat me up, you know, while you were getting leaner.
Yeah, I bet you wouldn't have thought that becoming an even more skilled chef was. I bet you never would have thought that that was going to be one of the results of doing a competition prep at the end of it all.
It's so true. Yeah.
That takes a lot of self-control though, creating all of these different dishes, only having a bite and then, putting the fork down after that. Do you find that I'll speak for myself. I'll say that one of my one of the things that I like about prepping is that there's this kind of stoic practice to it where we get to practice controlling our emotions and just getting really good at self-control and discipline, and I think that's a really cool part of prep. Is that something that you found was beneficial from doing it, was that you kind of got to practice those skills like harnessing the control over your desire for food, for example, and other emotional desires that you might have experienced?
100%. I mean, again, I told myself I'm doing this for me to prove I can do it and to put my will to the test. And
You made it
it
harder
was
for yourself too.
I did make it hard on myself.
Yeah.
But it's just like it's ironic because looking back, I was like, man, I am really happy. And I proved to myself that I can have an ironclad will because I'm grateful. Like and because Jeff was saying like, hey, it's normal to feel the urge to binge or maybe have a binge. Like I never did. And part of that was just because I feel like I had like a good support system with my family, but two, I would just have these like mantras, Like I'm a big believer in like self thought and just like positive thinking. And I would literally tell myself this like what I just told you, like it's not worth derailing my progress. First bite's the best bite. So I got my bite. There you go, you know?
That's so cool. That's so cool. Question, do you still cook those like really nice elaborate meals for your family like following the competition prep, or was that like that's just going to be the prep thing now?
Well, only every once in a while, because again, what was driven by the craving, right?
Right.
And now
Right.
that I'm well fed, like when I probably average maybe once a week of saying I really want some like fried fried fish and like jambalaya or something like that.
Yeah, yeah.
But it doesn't happen again, it doesn't happen as often because I'm well fed. I'm not nearly like as food focused. And so but again, it's kind of funny. My
Yeah.
kids even would say, next time you do a show, like, are you gonna make all those yummy
Yeah.
things
Well,
again?
that's what I was thinking is, the next time you do wanna compete, it'll be so easy to sell it the prospect of doing that to your family because 'cause they're all gonna be like, "Dad's gonna make all these really delicious gourmet meals again. It's gonna be amazing." So, yes, absolutely,
Exactly.
you should do it. That's
Exactly. Yeah.
that's awesome. Okay. So, prep started January, got real tough in June. You competed in August. So, how did the show go? What was that like?
Well, overall, again, it was all new, and it was just like, okay, I got to get the posing trunks. I did just in hindsight, I wish I would have done more, but I was just like, I just want to get to the finish line, and I did men's bodybuilding, right? People were like, "Are you gonna do men's physique and stuff?" And I'm like, "Nah, I'm just gonna do bodybuilding." But the next one I might do men's physique, but that's another topic. But so I just said, I gotta get the posing trunks, and I'm like, dang, I wore a speedo in water polo, so it wasn't like that big of a deal. But I was like,
Yeah.
oh, this shows even less than a
Yeah.
speedo does, and it was so funny because my mom, this is all the things. I'm a transparent guy. It was just like I was concerned about what my mom was gonna say because my mom was like, "You're gonna get on stage in a g-string and freaking," you know.
Yeah, that's
So I
hilarious.
prepped. I prepped her. I said, "Hey, this was like mid late July. We had him over for dinner. It was actually a day that I made chicken katsu. I remember it vividly, and it was a
Nice.
refeed day. So I was like, okay, I'll have a bite and I'll be done. But I know I have a refeed, so I'm not gonna go over. So I brought her the posing trunks. Hey, just so you know, this is what I'm gonna be wearing. And she looks at him and she's just like, okay, she took it pretty well. Um, and so the thing I was most not nervous about, just like not looking forward to, was the tan. I I get like I didn't know how my skin was gonna react because I suffer from eczema, right? And so that was one insecurity of mine where I was like, I'm gonna be on stage with basically nothing on. And I don't know. I sometimes I get flare ups, sometimes I don't. And I haven't really been able to pinpoint what like causes a reaction. And so I was thinking like, is this tan gonna like cause a reaction or something. Um, Gratefully it didn't, but still, I didn't enjoy the feeling of like getting all that synthetic stuff sprayed all over my body and the night before, just okay, have a good night's sleep, but you can't move. And you know, so didn't sleep well at all the night before, which I'm sure is pretty normal. Um, but at that point, you're just running off pure adrenaline. I'm just like super excited and like, okay, this is gonna be great. I practiced my posing routine. I've really been diligent with that. And show day comes, man, it was so much fun. It was so much fun. Like I was like ecstatic to be up there with the lights on. I come from a family of performers. Like I'm a musician. I hear you're a musician, so that's amazing.
Yeah. Hey, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and like we've not any strangers to performing in front of people, so that wasn't a nervous thing. And that plus the water polo experience, I'm like, yeah, I'm great. I'm used to performing sport in front of a lot of people, like practically naked, so whatever. And so yeah, I just did the thing, went up there, just had a blast. I think the crowning thing was again, it wasn't a big show, but that out of the whole show at the end they give like the awards for like the show. I think total there were about 35, 40 people.
Wow.
And I got best posing award. And I took
That's
that as
awesome.
like the crowning thing because you know
Yeah.
Jeff, his thing is like posing, right?
Yeah, he's like the
Like
master poser.
you can make or break your placement with the posing. And I'm
Yeah.
like, me knowing I am not the biggest guy, but I can come in pretty conditioned and I can show what I have well. And one thing it was funny, like all through the process, like Jeff was like, it's so interesting. Like your physique, it's like it kind of lights up when you pose. Like, yeah, when you see you just normal, it's like, oh, that guy, he looks like he's works out or whatever. But like it lights up in the posing. So I'm like, great, that sounds like something I can really focus on. And so, gratefully, yeah, that's kind of how the result ended, and I was just like over the moon, over the moon once I got that award. And then once that fizzled out, the hunger kicked in. And I'm like, get me to the nearest
Yeah.
my place where I'm gonna have my celebratory meal and yeah, it ended up pretty dang well. I had a ton of fun. I really did.
I'm really curious now as to what your music background is. You, what instrument?
Yeah, so this is just one. So
There it is.
this is the
It's a
tenor
bass?
ukulele,
Oh, it's a
tenor,
ukulele. There it
the
is.
ukulele. Yep.
Oh, there it is. That's awesome.
There's guitars on that wall, a piano. I sing and that's part of the thing. Like I tried to bring in some flair with my posing routine, like some showmanship and everything. And I feel like that was part of what like helped
Were
helped
you do you regularly, like, growing up and, like, do you regularly perform? Like, do you perform for your family, or is it just something that you kinda do for fun, or, like, what's your background with that? I'm wondering because I know that for me, my background with, like, trombone playing, bass trombone, like, after having done I studied it in university, so I performed in recitals and orchestra concerts and did mock auditions and real auditions, and I found that, like, when I did my first competition, like, I wasn't nervous for getting on stage at all the same way that I was when I would do recitals. I feel like being a musician before being a poser or a natural bodybuilder, it made the natural bodybuilding performing element, like, so much easier. So I guess I'm wondering, like, what did you kind of find something similar yourself?
Yeah, totally. Because I perform for the fam. I perform at church, at my church and stuff, and like performed at various other things. But like I totally agree. I feel like that helped with like not having nerves getting up on stage and honestly, arguably, I feel like it was even easier because, as you probably know, like most most instruments, you're using your hands and your digits. And when you get nervous, those digits, it's more sensitive, right? And so it's like I felt like okay, I'm using my whole body here, right? I'm not having to rely on one little digit, you know? Because when I play guitar, as you can imagine, it's like, oh shoot, you miss a fret just by a millimeter and it comes off flat, blink, you know?
Yep.
And so yeah, that's I totally agree. I feel like it
Yeah.
definitely helps comfort being on stage and stuff.
Yeah. That's awesome. Uh when I think it sounds like we're kind of similar in this regard too, is like when I don't get nervous for being on stage because of that, but like you mentioned that you were kind of worried about the tanning beforehand, so like the logistical things leading up to the show, those are the exact same things that I get nervous about, is like, did I remember all of my meals? Like, did I get the right groceries? Like, am I going to set my alarm so that I don't miss my tan the next, those kind of things. But I'm the same way. It's not so much being on stage. That part's fun. It's just like the logistics that are the biggest challenge that I find for myself. But
100%.
that's amazing. Okay. So you competed, you got best poser award. Then what was when after you finished, were you like, "Hey, I want to compete again. Like this is something I want to prep. I want to do another prep in the future." Were you like, "Hey, I need to recharge. I need to think about it," or what was your kind of immediate feeling after finishing the show?
My personality is I'm very much like a steady Eddie, meaning like I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I'm going to stay middle of the road. So I said, great, I'm going to enjoy this post show life, okay? But in the back, and so we'll see if I'm going to do this again. But in the back of my mind, the amount of fun I had and the sense of accomplishment, I already knew, okay, I'm probably going to do this again. When I'm gonna do it, I don't know. But like, but either way, I mean, maybe this is fast forwarding. As of now, I think probably 2026 is probably when I would compete again in fall, you know. Um, but again, we'll see how I feel at the end of this year, you know, because I never want to just like, if I'm gonna do it, I want to do it, and I want to be like revving to do it. When Jeff asked me back in March my feelings on it, I was like a hard no. I need to enjoy my life a little bit more before I sign up for that again. So naturally, I feel like the appetite, no pun intended, the appetite has to be there um, to want to really commit to the
Yeah.
prep. Which at
Make,
this rate, I feel like by the end of this year, by January, I'll be like, yeah, let's dial some things in and let's get ready for fall. You know?
that's awesome. And it makes sense. Prep is a pretty big undertaking, and I feel like unless you are really ready to do it, it's pretty tough to it would be pretty tough to do if you're not kind of ready to go all into it. So that makes
Yeah.
sense. I guess my last question for you is I'm just curious what it was like after you finished that that last show when you transitioned into kind of like this off season that you've been in. Was it a challenge for you to allow yourself in this context? So maybe it was a challenge before when you're kind of sitting in that 10% range to gain body weight before you even thought about competing. Did you find that it was a particular challenge when you got down to stage leanness and then allowing yourself to kind of let go a little bit and gain some body fat back? Did you find that to be a particular challenge, or were you kind of just ready at that point to gain some weight back?
I think it was a good mix. Of course, yeah, it definitely was a challenge to be like, wow, man, say bye to all these lines, say bye-bye. But then again, the same way that I would tell myself in prep about like not cheating or binging, making all those foods, I would just tell myself if I had those thoughts come into my mind, which were more gut reaction, crap, man, I'm not going to look as shredded, then I would tell myself, but this is part of the process. Remember how crappy you felt towards the end there. And that kind of self-talk was the thing that really helped me. And yeah, seeing those lines disappear, it sucked. But then I just would focus on, man, I'm feeling so great. man, my lifts are like going back up. Man, I'm just like progressing. And I'm like, so it's just more of that focus shift, right? From like, try to keep the muscle you have and start leaning down to like, look how your strength is coming back and overall how your mood is better, your energy levels are way higher. So that helped to balance it out until you
Mm.
just like sit at a heavier weight and over time your mental just returns back to normal. You're like, okay, this is fine. Like I'm fine. The world didn't end because I don't have striated glutes or anything, like
I'm not in zombie land anymore, zombie mode anymore.
exactly. Yeah.
Well,
So overall wasn't too bad.
yeah. Well, I think you put it really well earlier too, in that it's kind of like it's all about these trade-offs where it's like you trade the lines, but in return you get to feel good again. Your performance improves, you see your strength come back, and maybe life's a little bit more fun because you're not in zombie mode anymore. So that's the trade-off. But
I will
anyways,
say I did I had a trip planned to go back home to California a week after the show.
yep.
And I ate my fair share of burritos, man. I was like, this is payday, okay? And it's funny because I told myself, oh, here's all these food places I'm gonna hit up. But at the end of the day, all I wanted was burritos, so that's what we did.
Yeah, I mean, variety is nice, but at the end of the day, why not just stick with the one thing that you really want and have a ton of that? That's awesome.
Totally, yeah.
Well, anyways, Devin, yeah, this has been awesome. Thanks for sharing your story and your background with getting into natural bodybuilding, with competing, what the prep experience was like. Um, it's been great.
Yeah, likewise. I appreciate your time. It's been cool getting to know you and chatting about it. This is one of the topics that I am always down to chat about just because it's such an interesting journey, all aspects of it. And I think, I don't know, I don't like getting up on soapboxes often, but if I could just leave one thing, is just that, like, for everybody out there, like, I think the fact that anyone can just get on a journey to improve themselves doesn't have to be bodybuilding per se, but just to like improve your life physically and mentally, like that's the important thing. I'm a big believer in it's not where you are, it's the trajectory. And that starting point may be different for a lot of people, but the important thing is that you go and you don't feel discouraged by what you may see on TikTok or social media, right?
The world we live
Because
in.
that is the world we live in, right? But at the end of the day, like we're all individuals and we have our own value, and the value that we have isn't it just isn't tied to how we look, right? The fact that we don't look like super shredded or whatever. It's the fact that we're like trying to improve ourselves, right? So, anyways,
Self-betterment.
soapbox over.
Love it. I think that's an amazing insight. Cool. Well, thanks again for this, Devin. It's been awesome.
Cool. Likewise.